So, what was the reaction on your part when you heard that movie theaters could reopen following Mr. Legault's announcement?
I think when the original announcement came out, we were happy. We were expecting it, so it was a sign of relief, saying, okay, we might be at the end of this crazy period. But then we got the bad news at 6:15. When I got interviewed at 6:33 and told me that I can't run almost 50% of my business internally.
What was your thought there? You weren't really informed about that from the government themselves?
Well, we had not even had that discussion. In other words, with the public health people that we had discussed, it was clear that we could reopen with the same conditions as we had opened in July, August, and September. The only difference is we were going to have a curfew, and it was going to be a procedural mask versus just a face covering kind of thing. Those were the only two conditions. Everything else was supposed to stay the same. Look, I was surprised. I mean, I think my reaction on TV was almost like, somebody had just died in front of me. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this. What the hell are you saying? Right. But ultimately, I think the real concern is that they're now blaming public health as if public health said that's what they wanted, which is not the case. Once again, it's a lack of transparency at that level.
So where does that leave you now? It means that you're on February 26th, you're not going to reopen. Is that your stance at this point?
And right now, it just does not make economic sense. And our argument is going to be that we cannot operate our business in a viable enough and justifying the reason to be open at this moment. It just doesn't make sense. Clients, I think there's polls all over the place being done, and clients will not come back to theaters with their kids if they can't have at least that popcorn experience while watching a movie they want to watch. So, you need two. You need one and two. You can't just, jump to three and four. Let's say it just won't work. People just don't understand, what the government was thinking.
So on the business front, for you, it's not even worth it to just offer the movie and not the drinks, the beverages, the food that comes with it, right? You're saying it's part of the whole experience. It's not worth bringing that forward without that experience?
50% of our revenue comes from other business that's run in our theaters, be it arcades or be it foodstuffs versus the box office number. You got to remember, we're not, in no way are we subsidized. I mean, we're not a public pool. We're not a public arenas. It's not only about buying the lost leader service, I mean, so it's a big problem when it comes to meeting a financial viability when you're cutting a key component of our business plan.
So the operating costs then are just not justifiable in that sense for you to bring everybody back, the overhead, just to show the films, is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, mathematically, I have 100% of the costs, but I only have maximum 50% of the revenue. And that's if everything goes well, right? Because I won't even have 50% of the revenue because some people will be turned off and won't even come if there is no food or concession or anything like that.
What about, the loyal customers of yours who are really dying to come back and are hoping that you'd be the ones to reopen? What do you say to them in this trying time of, wanting to see a movie, but just can't getting that experience at this point?
Well, they're saying, actually, I'm not saying very much to them, but they are saying to us, it just doesn't make sense. How could we be forced to come back, or how could we be forced to reopen if you can't give us the experience we want? That's a bit the issue at hand right now.
What are you saying to the government at this point? What is the dialogue, if any? What are you hoping to say to them if you can?
Well, what we're telling them is it's unacceptable, and they have to change that stance. I mean, their first reaction was to say it's not us, it's public health. And I called BS on that. And I said, look, I have the recommendations and it doesn't say that. So now I'm assuming that they're scrambling to try and find a viable, face-saving solution out of this one. And I guess I'll get a call in the next few hours.
And at this point, when you do reopen, you do have a lot of hurdles to jump through, right? The curfew, like you mentioned, how is that going to work with, showings at night?
Well, the showings at night's another problem. There will not be any showings at night. So the truth of the matter is, if we can open, we will open for spring break, and then we'll only open on weekends during the regular school week until the curfew gets pushed to 9:30, and then we can start having a 7 o'clock showing every day, and then eventually, I guess, that curfew will disappear. Even though the curfew has nothing to do with theaters. I mean, we can do like in France. People could violate the curfew if they have a movie ticket, right, and then go home. If the curfew is really only to control visits in private residences, then adapt that curfew the same way France does it.
Is then your goal to reopen for March break, as you're mentioning? Because I mean, the February 26th date is coming up, and until the government makes those changes for you, you won't reopen March break, or will the plan be to make yourselves available for March break anyway?
No, so we're going to make ourselves available once, uh, 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 so that we can open if the change is applied. But I could be as ready as I want. If I don't put that key in that door, that theater isn't opening. And if the conditions aren't right, I've lost enough money on amateur decisions from this government. I'm not going to continue bleeding even more just because they want to continue with the amateurism.
Mr. Legault yesterday dropped your name in the press conference, and what does that say to you? I mean, it looks like he's willing to work with you, but right now you're not pleased. You're not happy with how things are going. So where do you
No,
go
I
from
mean,
here?
look, it's not a secret. I mean, I liked Mr. Legault, before this pandemic. I voted for him in the last elections. I thought he was going to be, a great leader. I think he's a status quo leader. I think right now he's proven that he can't handle a crisis, and he's not willing to actually make the decisions, the tough decisions that need to be made. And I don't think he's willing to actually talk frankly to Quebecers. And so the real problem is that he can name drop all he wants. I guess it just helps in his star status by dropping names. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. I mean, he can pick up the phone. He has my number. We can have it out. We can have the discussion. And we just need to stop blaming public health for decisions that they have not taken or for recommendations that they have not recommended. I mean, that is the fact.
So what is the next step for you? Where are you left at this point until you get that phone call, until you have that conversation?
Well, right now I'm just, fielding all of these interviews that the media seems to want, and I'm continuing the regular course of my other businesses and making sure that everything else is ready to go if we are if we have the winning conditions. I mean, as a joke to Mr. Legault, I'll probably say, you know what, this is like a referendum. Opening or not opening is going to be based, do we have the winning conditions to reopen? If we don't, we're not going to reopen. It's the same thing as a referendum, right? He said if the winning conditions are there, he'd have it. And if they're not there, he won't. So he won't right now. And so we won't right now unless winning conditions to reopen are there.